Hi folks, and welcome to the configuration training for the portal connector, commonly known as TPC. A prerequisite for this training is that you have a portal connector site installed and ready to configure. It could be a demo site that we have provided to you, or one of your own sites that you have spun up in your environment. If you do not have the portal connector installed and you're looking for instruction on how to install that in your system or on a pre-existing Safefinity site, the URL on the screen here, www.crmportalconnector.com/training/installation, will help you get that set up and running. So first, what I'd like to do is jump into the agenda. So for the configuration training, there are several points that we're going to touch upon. Connecting the portal connector or TPC to Dynamics 365 or CRM. Again, the portal connector does function with all versions of CRM from 2011 through to 2016, CRM Online and Dynamics 365. Then we're going to cover managing CRM entities, on how you can configure your CRM entities so you can be up and ready to create forms and create pages based on those entities. From there, we're going to go into the form builder and demonstrate how you would use the tools in the form building environment to create those robust experiences for your end customers or your organization. We're going to talk a little bit about creating and editing templates. So templates of two different types. We have page templates as well as widget templates. So we'll talk a little bit about that, and then into building pages and using some of those forms we built in the form section to put on those pages and provide to your general user audience. From there, we'll get into a little bit of configuring roles and permissions so we can secure those pages. And then we'll talk a little bit about creating portal users. So let's jump straight into it. The next topic, of course, is connecting the portal connector to Dynamics 365 or Dynamics CRM. Now, throughout this, there will be an opportunity at the end of each section to ask questions. So this is a pre-recorded session, so there is an attendant that can answer questions through chat. So feel free to type in any questions there, or you can wait towards the end of each section and ask questions then. So let's jump into it. So here's my demo environment. If you received a trial from the portal connector, this is likely what it will look like. It could look, a little bit different, but the premise is the same in the sense that it's a Sitefinity site with the portal connector pre-installed and just needing to be configured to connect to your Dynamics CRM system. So to get to the configuration area, what you want to do is in your URL, type in Sitefinity at the end. So what that will do is it will bring up the login for the administrative area for the portal connector. And then you would want to log in with the credentials that were provided to you. So click on login. And then from here you'll see that you're in the dashboard, and across the top we have various options: dashboard, pages, content, which has all those content management system type functions. The portal connector, depending on what version of Safefinity you're using, you may have e-commerce, into the design with page templates and widget templates, and then administration and marketing. So what we're interested in is actually under administration, and we're going to go to the portal connector configuration here. So once in your portal connector configuration, it will load with the default Dynamics CRM connection settings. So you'll see here that we have a connection type online, on-premise, web service. We have the web service is something that you likely won't use without the assistance of the Portal Connector team, so don't worry about that. It's more about on-premise or online. Online will encompass any CRM Online or Dynamics 365 implementation, where on-premise would be primarily an internet-facing deployment that is hosted locally in your network infrastructure. So my CRM, Dynamics CRM system is actually an on-premise IFD, so I'm going to select that, and you notice here that some of the fields change. It is secured with SSL, and then I'm just going to go ahead and type in my server URL. Now, if you're connecting to an on-premise, typically what you would have is you have the URL to your CRM system, but then you may also need the organization name after the whole URL, so with a / organization name. If it's online, then usually you only need that online name, the orgname.crm.dynamics.com. But because it is an on-premise IFD, I need that organization name. My domain, my username, in some cases you may need an email address, or it may just be your username, and then of course your password for that username. So you may also need, if it's not the username, if it's not the email address, it could also be your domain / username, and then of course your password. Clicking on Save and Test Connection, what that's going to do, it's going to save all your credentials to the configuration for the Portal Connector, and then also run a little test, and a message will pop up here whether it's successful or not. So there we go. It's been saved successfully, and the CRM tested successfully. So so at that point you do have a connection to Dynamics CRM. And then after you initially connect it, what you want to do is move into the general settings section, and then from here you have quite a few options that you can pre-configure. You can see here that we have maximum file size for any type of uploads into Notes or SharePoint, document extensions, just some basic no connection messages. So you have various options here. I'm not going to go through each of these options. There's usually a pretty good description underneath each option to identify what that is for. But throughout here you'll see several other settings as well. After you connect to Dynamics CRM, there's a couple steps you want to do. The first step is that you want to install the CRM solution. So by clicking this button here, it'll actually determine which version of CRM you're using and install the corresponding Portal Connector solution in your CRM system. So if you are connected to a production environment, keep that in mind that you are installing a solution. It's very minimal. I think it's 6 entities, so it doesn't cause too many ripples, but it's best to install this in a dev environment, go through that proper QA procedure, and then eventually roll out to a production environment. So I'm just going to go ahead and click on this, install my CRM solution. Now while that's installing in my Dynamics CRM system, the other step I want to do is I want to refresh my CRM metadata. So what that is metadata in CRM is basically all that information that defines what entities you have in your CRM system, what fields, all the different workflows. And what this does, it goes out and grabs all that information and stores it locally in the portal. The reason it does that is that when we're configuring those forms or those pages, it saves on load on your CRM system, because we're not constantly having to go to your CRM system to define what field names are or what labels are. It's all stored locally in the portal, and it makes it a lot quicker and faster to configure, and takes that load off your Dynamics CRM system. So I'm going to go ahead and click on this refresh CRM metadata as well. Okay, so it will take a little bit of time, but that's all right. You can continue working with the system while it's downloading that metadata. So now what we've done is we've clicked on the CRM metadata, we've clicked on Install CRM Solution, you can monitor those tasks by using the Schedule Task Monitor. So by clicking on this button here, it's actually going to open up another window. I recommend that you don't do anything on this screen. You don't delete any of these running tasks, or move them or start them manually. It's best to use those buttons. And you can see here we have several tasks running right now. We have the Install CRM Solution, and it's currently running, so we can sit and watch as that actually runs. We can also see the Retrieve All Metadata Changes, which is also currently running, and when it actually start running. Other services, they run in the background, and they're important for the system, so no deleting, no refreshing, just this is just for informational purposes, so you can see which services are actually running at this point in time. So we just finished one. That was the installing one just finished. So let's jump into our Dynamics CRM system. So here we are, TPC 101, dynamicsxrm.ca. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to navigate to my solution section. So under settings, I'm going to go to my solutions, and we should see that Dynamics, or that TPC solution installed. Couple more seconds here. CRM is typically a little bit slower when it's loading its solutions. So there we go. You can see here that we have the portal connector installed. This is the version of the portal connector solution for CRM. It may not correspond with the version that you're running of the portal connector. So if you're running portal connector 4.0 or 4.1, you could very well have 3.3.2.1 installed in your CRM. It's just there hasn't been any changes for that particular version of the portal connector. So we don't update this every time that we update the portal connector software. Okay. So just a quick refresh of the screen, just so we can update the navigation. So the navigation for Dynamics CRM. And what we'll see here is if we drop this main section down, and under settings, you'll see now that we have portals, portal invite, and portal roles. So by default, when you install that solution via the portal connector configuration, it will pre-configure that portal record. So you can see here that we have the portal that we initiate the installation from, TPC 101 portalconnector.com, already pre-configured inside of CRM, so you don't have to connect CRM to your portal. Additionally, if we go into portal roles, you'll also see all of the pre-configured roles already added to CRM. Now you can add additional roles here, or what you can do is you can add those roles on the portal connector side of things as well. Alright, so now we did kick off the refresh CRM metadata. So if you want to see the status of that, you can go into the portal connector. If you go into Entity Metadata Manager, that's where you'll see it actually running. You can see here that it's going out and it's grabbing all those different entities, and it's just storing all that information. And like I said, that's going to take a little bit of time, but this is where it actually shows up. And you can see it's in the progress right now of going out and grabbing that information. And I just moved from business unit, and then we have campaign still working through it here, and you'll see another one pop up in a second here with that metadata as well. Okay, so that's the first item on our agenda, is connecting the portal connector to Dynamics 365 and Dynamics CRM. So at this point, if there's any questions on connecting the portal connector to Dynamics 365, this is a good time for those questions. Okay, so the next segment of our training is managing CRM entities. And in this section, what we'll do is define which entities we want to use within our portal site. So let me just open up our environment here. Here we go. Now we've already talked about the metadata management, so let me just jump back into there for a second. Edit Entity Metadata Manager. So from here we should see most of those entities are done, or if not all of them. So there they all are, some 300 and some odd that you would see in Dynamics CRM, but it also has a list of all the custom entities as well. Now if I was to change the configuration inside of Dynamics CRM for one of these entities and I wanted to use those changes within the portal, then I'd have to synchronize that specific entity. So if I added fields to account and I want to expose those fields on a form in the portal, then the next step that you'd want to do is just synchronize that account, and you can do it manually just by clicking on the button here, synchronize, which will just go out and grab all the metadata changes for the account entity. Or what you could do is just click on synchronize all metadata, and it will go through that process again of grabbing all of the metadata for your CRM organization. So leaving the metadata aside, the next step that you want to do is under your CRM entities, there's a list of entities from CRM. So here we go, just a short list: account, contact, and incident. So basically what this is exactly what I said it was. It's just a short list of entities. The reason that we have this short list is when you're configuring the portal connector, there's times where you have to select an entity that you want to work with, and ideally it would be easier if you only had the 5 or 10 or 20 entities that you want to work with listed there, instead of having to sift through all 300 and some odd entities or custom entities that have no bearing or reason to be on your portal. So now I already have 3 pre-configured, but if I wanted to add a new entity to this list, I would simply just click on the Create a CRM Entity button. And what that would do is it'll bring up a little drop-down box with a listing of all of my entities in my Dynamics CRM system. So for this example, I'm just going to select the lead entity. I just had it there a second ago. There it is, lead. And then by clicking publish, what that's going to do is just going to add it to the list of entities that I can use for portal configuration on the portal connector. Now that was a relatively short session. So if there's any questions on managing your CRM entities, now would be a perfect time. Okay, for our next segment, what we're going to talk about is building forms. So this is where we'll be able to build out any of those custom forms based on those entities that we have pre-set up in our CRM entities. So what I'd like to do is just jump right into that. Alright, so back into my demo environment here. So to build a form, forms are located under Content and then Forms. And you'll see here that typically if you have one of our demo sites, you will have some of our pre-built forms. And what I'm going to do is just create a new form. So we're going to build out a personal profile form. So give it a descriptive title, profile, and I'm going to make this an MVC form, and let's go with personal. So you can have any type of title. I just want to make it very descriptive, knowing that's a profile form, and it's going to be a personal profile form for MVC. So the reason I have MVC in there is because we have 2 different widget sets. You do have the capability of creating forms using a MVC framework, or you can use the traditional web forms framework. MVC typically is a little bit quicker because it's primarily client side driven. So all that processing is done on the client side, so it's much faster and easier to interact with. So from there, I click on Create and go to Add Content, and we'll be presented with our form builder interface. So you can see here, when it first loads up, the only thing we have is an empty container called body. Now the next few steps are very, very important. These are probably the most important aspects of building a form. So the first step to building a form is that you want to add a form layout. So if you go over to layouts here, and you'll see here that we have this layout called TPC form layout. It's very important that you have one of these TPC form layouts on the page, and you know that you have it on the page because you'll see this blue border here. And essentially what that does is it just says that anything that resides within that blue border is going to be submitted back to Dynamics CRM. So if you don't have that blue border, your form's not going to function properly. So from there, we can also control the presentation by adding other grid layouts. So I'm just going to drag a few on here. Let's go with maybe a 3-column layout, and let's go with a single layout, a single column layout, and then maybe a 2-column layout here. Let's go with this one here. Let's drag that in. Make sure all of them are within that blue border. Okay. So from there, clicking back to content, you'll see that we have all of these open containers now instead of just that single body container. So the next part is we want to define what type of data or what type of form this is going to be, which entity it's going to interact with. And to do that, you want to use a form configuration widget. So just drag one of those on there, just drop it in place. You only want one form configuration widget per blue border. So if you have more than one in there, it could cause problems with your forms. So make sure you only have one in there. Once I drag it in there and I click on edit, this is where I can select which entity I want to work with from CRM. So of course it's only going to show our short list of entities that we had pre-configured from our entity listing there. So I'm going to select contact because it's going to be a contact record. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to say, you know what, I want this form to be pre-populated with the logged in user's contact ID. So that way when I log in, it's going to determine which contact I am in CRM and pre-populate it with my profile information. So you can see that there's several options there. I can also populate it with my parent company ID or a custom query string. The default option will be just basically the populating it with an ID that's passed through as the primary key of that specific record. So in this particular case, we're going to use that contact ID. Clicking on save, you'll see here it updated the presentation a little bit. But now I'm free to use any of these fields down the side. So I'm not going to go into too many details on what all these fields do and how you can configure them. We can have a different session on the specifics of some of these fields. For the most part, most of them are self-explanatory. So I'm going to drag a few fields on here. I'm just going to do it pretty quickly here. And I'm not configuring them yet. I'm just dragging them on. So I got a couple text fields, maybe first name, last name, mobile phone. Let's go with business phone. Let's take this one here and drop it in there for email address. And let's go with another one in here for street. So basically just some profile information. Just building it out as quickly as I can here. So we got the city, and they're all text fields I'm adding right now. So we can change it up a little bit later, but I'm going to show you how to configure most of these right away. So state, let's go with zip code, and then of course the country or region, like that. And you know what? Let's add a profile picture there as well. So let's take this image here and just drop it right here in that box. Okay, so from there, what I want to do is configure all of these fields to be the fields from CRM. So clicking on edit, I know that I'm using a contact entity and I know it's a text field. So now for my attributes, it'll just load up all of the fields that could be represented as text. So I'm going to scroll down here and find my first name. So there's my first name. I'm going to make this one required, and I can change the message if I wanted to. Please enter your first name. I do have some appearance settings that I can adjust. So if I wanted this to be a different type of input, I can make an HTML input, a multi-line, a password or a text field. So I'm just going to keep it as text. And then I can also add additional validation if I want to use in regex expressions. And we have some common ones in there already. And of course I can create a custom one. So I'm going to leave it as none for now and just click on save. So you can see it updated the presentation with first name. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to quickly go through this and configure all of these fields. So we're going to make this one a last name. Let's go with last name. And make this required. Click on save. Again, we'll take this one here and make this a mobile phone. Mobile phone. For this one here, I think I'm going to add a validation to it. I'm going to make it a phone number. So this, and of course I can change the error message if it comes up with a different error message than what you normally expect. So it could be, you know, the phone number isn't in the proper format to be submitted. Clicking on save, that's good here. So let's click on save here, mobile phone, edit again. This one here will be a business phone. Business phone. Again, I'm going to add that validation for a phone number. So this validation is typically North American phone numbers. If you wanted a European format or any, as a matter of fact, anywhere else in the world, then you can create a custom format for that. But for our purposes, we're just going to use a typical format here. So clicking on save, business phone. Let's go down here and add email address. There it is there. Of course, I can change these labels as well. So if I want to add anything to it, I can adjust the title there. Click on save. Let's get into some address information here. So address 1, and we'll make this one street 1. And let's create that label as just street. Okay, scroll down a little bit. This one here, we'll make this one city. And save. And we have state or province. Zip or phone, or postal, I should say. And then finally the country or region that it's from. Click on save. You'll notice here that it automatically adds that submit button, and of course you know, there's different properties for that as well if you want to adjust the size of the text or you know, the content of it. Update my profile. Click on save, and let's just take a look here at the image widget here to make sure that we're good. So just some basic information here, the size of it. Keep in mind that the image that it's loading is the entity record image. So the maximum size is 144 pixels by 144 pixels. That won't change. That's a CRM limitation. Okay. So click on save now. And now by clicking on publish, we've created our first form, and it's a profile form. So click on publish. And there it is, profile MVC personal. Now before I actually leave this, I'm going to actually go back in there because there's a couple things that I wanted to bring to your attention. So here's our profile form. Now on submit, it's automatically going to update this information in Dynamics CRM, but you can also control what it does after you submit that record. So if you go over here to settings, you can see here that I can restrict the number of entries. So if you're doing some type of a polling or voting application and you only want one entry per IP or per username if the person's logged in, then you can restrict it. But you can also configure the success message for the form. So if you wanted that to display a message, or if you want that to redirect to a different page, you can type into the type in a URL for that page if you want some type of a custom message to show up. With the forms, you can also, if it's something that you want notification on, you can also subscribe to it, saying, hey, this form has been submitted. In this particular case, you probably don't want to be notified of every profile update, but if it was something like a support case and you want to send out that notification, you can do it here. Or what you could do is have some type of a workflow within Dynamics CRM to send that out when that record is created. For our purposes, we're just going to use this standard message, thanks for filling out our form. On top of which, we've only used the text field so far, but you can see here that there's also yes, no fields, date, time fields, pick list, lookup, any type of field that you would find within Dynamics CRM, you'll be able to find in this list. Plus a series of more advanced widgets that we'll cover in another session for those different widgets. Now, for each of these widgets as well, it's important for me to note that clicking on Edit here, you'll notice that every widget has this little blue help icon here. So clicking on that help icon, it's going to take you to context-sensitive help for that specific widget. So it'll talk about how you can configure that specific widget. This one here, of course, is for the text box, and it'll show you all of the different properties for it, validation, numeric properties, and all the properties are listed here and exactly what that property is intended to do. What it'll also do is it'll go through all the JavaScript API options as well. So for each of those widgets, there's a very robust JavaScript engine for it, so you can manipulate the presentation of it. You can set the value, get the value, hide and show the different fields. And of course, if you want to, you can go to the full API and see all the examples of how you would implement that JavaScript API. Not that it's required, but if you are a developer and you want to get a little more customization, you have that capability using the documentation here. So with that, that's a quick summary of building forms. So what I'd like to do is just jump into some questions. If you have any questions, just please jump in there and ask away. All right, moving on. Our next topic is creating and editing templates. So now that we have that form created, the next step in our process is being able to add that form to a page. But before we can create a page, I always recommend that we create a template that can be used across multiple pages, so you can get all that framework stuff, your company logo, your navigation, all that stuff worked out right in the template itself. So to create a template, you would go under Design, and you can see page templates and also widget templates. So for a majority of the widgets within the portal connector or Sitefinity, they have customizable widget templates, so you can go in there, you can customize the HTML to be specific to your needs, again delivering that exceptional customer experience to whatever your standards may be. For this section, we're going to talk a little bit about page templates, so let's jump into there. Now, by default, you'll have a series of page templates that are should be already in your system, and you can see them here. There are various different layouts, and for the most part, you could use those. I always recommend starting with a new one. So if I click on Create a Template, and what I'm going to do here is actually create a template that's based on one of those existing templates. That way, if you need to reuse that template for multiple different applications within your portal, then you're not bound to having the same template across the whole portal itself. So I'm going to call this one, give us a name, custom template. Of course, this name can be anything, so it could be your home template, your inner template, any type of template that you might be working with within your site. Usually there's a graphic design associated with this, and we're not going to go into to that side of things, because you can upload a master page with a brand new theme and all that good stuff. What we're going to do is just use the default out of the box type functionality. So you can see here, going down a little bit further, I can change the template thumbnail if I wanted to. I'm just going to leave it at default right now. I can base this template on another template. So I can say, yeah, use another template to base that on, or don't use a template, start from scratch. So I'm going to base this on one of the existing templates. So it brings up my little template selector here. I'm going to select another template. And in this particular scenario, I want to use one of these bootstrap templates here. You know what, maybe we'll start with this one here, one column and header, footer, so on, so on. So I'm just going to click on that, click on done. So that's going to be, what my template's based on. So it should come in that structure when I click on create and go to add content. So again, templates are used to create multiple pages with the similar layout as what is defined within the template. There we go. So you can see here that we have those three containers, the header, the body, and of course the footer. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go ahead and start configuring some of this. I'm going to actually add a layout here. So similar to the form builder, it pretty much functions in the exact same manner. Things you do not want to use are these layouts here. Don't use these layouts for any pages or templates, anything under the portal connector. These are just primarily for forms. So I'm going to open up my my grid widgets here, and let's go with a 3-column one, a grid. There we go. Go back to my content, and let's say, for instance, I want to add an image. So let me add an image here. This image may be a logo, for instance. So let's add a logo here. Opening that up, I can say upload an image. So let's select an image from my computer here. Images, and let's go with the portal connector logo here. Of course, this is going to be your organizational logo. It doesn't have to be portal connector logo. So there it is. I can add some different text to it. I'm just going to upload that straight in there and click on save. So there's my logo. Now I likely probably want a login widget. So if I go down here, not necessarily a login, but at least a login name or a login logout button. So let's go with that. Drag that up there. This requires a little bit of configuration. Click on edit. I may have to configure, basically where it's going after it's successful. So that's my username. I'm going to actually change this. So after you log in, this is what's going to be displayed. So I'm going to go with first name, last name. So this is coming from the profile information of Sitefinity. My login URL. Let's go with, I think it's login. And then of course my logout URL, and we'll make that the same as well with login. I want to show the login name, so let's click on true. There we go, and then click on save. So now when this template is used, you'll see a little login button here, and of course once they're logged in, you'll see their name displayed as who's logged in. So the next thing I want to add is a little bit of navigation. So open up my navigation. You can see here there's a whole bunch of different navigations. I'm just going to take this just as regular navigation here and drop it. Let's drop it right in there. So I actually dropped it right inside of that header container. Clicking on edit, and now I can say, let's display all pages under a particular page or top level pages. But I think I'm going to select all pages under my portal node. That way when they log in, we can reuse this template and they'll see all the pages under the portal. So let's click on done there. Of course, your structure may not be the same as mine. If you use one of our demo sites, it likely is. But if it isn't, it's basically how you want that navigation to be displayed. So from there, I can say, include how many levels. So this will create flyouts if you wanted to, drop downs and flyouts and all the other good stuff. I can determine whether that template is horizontal, whether they're pills or sitemap, tabs, vertical. We're going to keep it at horizontal, and I only want that one level. And then, of course, clicking on save, and we'll see that. So I already have some different pages residing under that portal node, and that's something that we can adjust afterwards when we get into the page side of things. So from there, you can add some footer information if you wanted to, or you can just leave it the way it is. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to click on Publish now. We have a pretty basic template, logo, login, logout, plus navigation. And that's essentially creating that template. So you'll see that custom template right there. And you can see that it's actually based on the one column header and footer template. That way, if you do inherit something, or say for instance if you wanted that to customize this one column header footer template, by going in here and modifying this template, you're actually going to be creating customizations on that template that's being inherited from. Okay, so let's just jump out here. You can create as many of these templates as you like. It's pretty flexible in that sense, but that's a good start to creating templates. So what I'd like to do is, if there's any questions about creating templates, let's address those now, and then we can jump into actually creating pages, and we can get that form on the page. Alright, our next topic is building pages, which should incorporate the template that we just put together, as well as we can put that profile form on the page as well. So let's get into our demo environment here. Pages, if you click on the Pages menu item at the top, you will be presented with your current page structure. Again, if this is a demo site that we provided to you, you should have some pages already created in here. You can see here we have the login, the portal, and then we have a profile node. So what we're going to do is build a page underneath this profile node. So the easiest way to do that is just to select that node. And you notice the menu at the top changed a little bit. So I'm going to create a child page under that selected node. Alright, so clicking on that, we'll be presented with the Create Page dialog. So here we are in name, we're going to call this one My Profile. And then we can scroll down a little bit. You can see that we can change that URL for it if we wanted to, right here. So if we didn't want it called My Profile, then we can change that. We want it to reside underneath the portal/profile node. Then we have some other options like show in navigation. So if we want this to be hidden and not shown in our navigation, we can just uncheck that. But for this particular purpose, we're going to leave that checked. And then we have a couple other options using this page as a group page only. So similar to the way that the profile node was. That is just a page that contains other pages. There's no actual content for it. So that's what that option would be for. And then you can also have a page that redirects to another page. So if you wanted to redirect to a different website, or maybe some content on your corporate site, you can select this here and then type in a URL of where that's going to go. So for our purposes, we're just going to create a regular page. So we're going to leave it like that. You can see here, this is where we would select our template. So I want to select a different template. I want to select that template that we just created, the custom template. So if you scroll down, you'll see, where is it here? Oh, scroll up. Custom template. So I'm going to select that, click on Done. And of course, I can create that page from scratch as well if I wanted to. For any SEO purposes, you do have the ability to enter in keywords and descriptions for that page. Plus, there's some advanced options here that we're not going to cover right now, but mainly have to do with some development type items as well as some caching. So I'm going to click on Create and go to Add Content. And again, you'll notice that this designer for the page is very similar to to all the other designers, the form designer as well as the template designer. And that's a key advantage of the portal connector, is that once you learn how to use one experience, you'll be able to apply that same knowledge across multiple areas of the portal connector. So once learning how to use the form builder, now you have the page editor, which is very similar in the sense that it has the layout tab up top here, has content, and of course the only difference is instead of having fields to drag onto a form, now you have different elements like grids and lists and whatnot to drag onto that form, as well as some map functionality, some charting capabilities, and so on and so on. So what we've done is, and we're not going to go through most of these widgets in this particular demo, but again, it does have that help icon. So if you want to drag one of these widgets on, I'm going to take this TPC form manager, just drag it into that middle container, click on select a form, and of course, like I said, you do have that help icon for any of these widgets that you might find. I would suggest that if you start with MVC, that you stick with MVC, and you can see that all the widgets down the side here, they're labeled with little MVC tabs on them, so you know which ones to use. As a matter of fact, because we created an MVC form, if you use a regular CRM form manager, then you would not be able to select that MVC form. This is more for web forms, and that's the only one you can select. So, and another thing that I like to mention is that on the layout tab, be sure not to use these two layouts on pages. Unfortunately, it's required for us to keep those where they are, but don't use them for pages, only use them in forms. So going back to my content here, got my TPC form manager on the page, clicking on select a form, and the only thing I'm going to do here is just select my personal profile form here. That's the form that we just created. Again, I can go into the settings here, and I can adjust various settings. I can use a custom confirmation if I wanted to, and I can change that message similar to where it was in the form creator. I can make that whole form read only, and I can make that whole form insert only as well, so I can't do any type of editing on that form, just inserting records. But for our purposes, like I said, we're going to be modifying our personal profile, so we can't use the insert only. Just going to click on save now. Click on save, you'll see that form load up in our TPC form manager. There it is. So basically the same structure that we have, and what we're going to do from here is just click on publish. So from there, we now have a fully functioning page to load profile information. So if I want to, I can expand that, and you can see my profile there. I'm just going to actually drag this up and just drop it right underneath there, my profile. I can view that page, but because I'm not an actual portal user, I'm an administrator, it's just going to come up as a blank form. So clicking on that view button, you can see what that presentation is actually going to look like. So there it is. It's a completely empty form. Of course, you can always add a title up top here. You can change all this information as well. This is something that we kind of just whipped together really quick. So in our next section, we're going to talk about roles and permissions, and then eventually get to the point where we actually create a user and have that user log in so they can interact with this form. So at this time, if there's any questions about pages, I know there's a lot of widgets on the pages, so it may take some time for you to get familiar with all of those widgets, but we'll also have some links at the end of this training session which will help you go through and learn more about the various sections: building forms, building pages, templates, and so on and so on. So if there's any questions, let's address those now. Okay, moving along. Now what we're going to do is talk a little bit about configuring roles and permissions. So what we like to do is actually apply some permissions to that new profile page that we just created, so it's secure and only available to users that log in. So the first step I want to talk about is configuring roles. So under administration, you'll see here that we have users and roles. With the portal connector, it's recommended that you do not create users under the users section because it won't be linked to a CRM contact, and we'll go into some of those details of how to create that user in the next part of the configuration training. But for now, what we want to do is configure some roles. So you have two options for configuring roles. If you click on the roles here under user management, from here you'll see that there's already a series of roles configured. A lot of them are built-in roles for Sitefinity for modifying and editing content. But what you can do is you can create new roles. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a role here. I'm going to call this role, let's call this portal user. Portal user, click on create. For the most part, creating that portal user, right now they have permission to absolutely nothing. So if you wanted that portal user to modify content within Sitefinity, then you can go over here to permissions, click on permissions here, and you can assign some permissions to modify different content within Sitefinity. You can see here, manage users, manage roles, a whole bunch of different access rights that you can give them to modify back-end content. For the most part, when we're talking about portals, they wouldn't have access to the back-end. It's primarily just for the user end. And you can see here right now there's no checkboxes, no check marks, so they don't have any permission to anything. So we're going to keep it like that for now. And click back to my pages here. So now that we have that role created, before I actually assign roles to various parts of the portal, I want to show you that you can also create roles on the CRM side of things. So if you open up your CRM system and you go under settings, you'll see here portal invites, and portal roles. So you can create those portal roles right here as well. So clicking on new. Now keep in mind that if you create a portal role on the Sitefinity site, it's not going to show up in this list until you assign it to an actual portal user. So what I can do here, I can create a new role. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to create the same one, corresponding one here. First I'm going to select my portal, which is the TPC 101. And I'm going to create portal user right here. And of course I can give it a description if I wanted to. You can also see all the portal users that actually have this portal role applied to it. But in this particular scenario, because it's a new role, there won't be any users with that role. Clicking on save and close. And again, what we'll do is we will assign that role to a user in our next segment of the training. So now that we have that role created, like I said, you can create it either on the CRM side or on the Sitefinity side. Now what we can do is we can assign that role to any element of the portal connector. So by default, what I want to do is under my portal node here, secure that whole portal node by adding permissions to it. So I can do it on a page-by-page basis, or I can do it across a whole node. And you can see right now it's inheriting the permissions from the root node. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to break inheritance here, because right now everyone has access to view that page. So what I want to do is just change that to a selected role or user, add roles, users. I'm going to select that portal user role. There it is there. Click on, if I want to, I can assign a specific user to that page. And we have no users created right now, so but if we did, there'd be a list of users listed here. But for the most part, we're just going to select portal user. Click on done. Click on done again. And now, clicking on back to pages, now you'll notice that all of these pages here will be secured, and you won't be able to access them unless you're an administrator or a portal user, or you belong to that portal user role. So like I said, you can assign permissions to pages, but you can also assign permissions to individual elements within pages as well. So if I open up my profile here, there we go. So for each TPC widget here, you can click on More, and you'll see permissions. So click on permissions, you'll be presented with pretty much a similar permission structure as before. View a widget, I can change that, and I can say selected roles or users. For our purpose, we don't need to secure individual elements on this page. We're securing the whole page in general. So I'm going to click back to pages. So not only can we secure pages and individual elements on a page, but we can also secure individual content as well. So if I only wanted certain users to have access to certain forums, I can go in here and say actions, permissions, and assign permissions to those forms as well. Again, for the most part with portals, most of the time you're just assigning permissions to pages. So that's a quick summary of roles and permissions. If there's any questions, we can talk about those now, and then we'll jump into actually creating a user and seeing what we've actually produced. Okay, so finally, creating portal users. There's several different ways we can create users. The first and simplest way to create a user is through CRM. So if I go into CRM and I open up my contacts, if I wanted to say for instance make a user for Jim here, Jim Glynn, I can open up his contact record, and there's two different ways I can do it from the contact record. I can invite that user using the invite to portal functionality, and what this would do is you can see here there's our portal list on the side, TPC 101 crmportalconnector.com. I can specify a role, so portal user, and by clicking on save, what that's going to do, it's going to generate an email that's going to be sent out from Dynamics CRM, and it's going to invite that user to the portal, and you can customize the template of that email under the email templates in CRM. And what you want to do is just point that to the invite widget page within the portal. So that's a little bit more advanced for creating a user, and what that would, and it basically allows that user to go in there, type in a password, and automatically be assigned this portal user role. Alternatively, what you can do is create a user through Manage Portal Roles. So click on Manage Portal Roles. It comes up with the Manage Portal Roles dialog. So there it is. There's our portal. If you have multiple portals within this dynamic CRM system, they'll be listed here. You want to select whichever portal it is. Give them a username, a password, and then click on Save. They have no permission to the portal yet. That's just creating their user. So when that comes back, there it is. It's been saved successfully. So now if I go into my portal here and I go into users, you'll see Jim Glynn is now a user within the portal. So there's J Glynn right there. Has no roles assigned to him. So after you save that record, then you get the role box will light up, and you'll be able to select which roles they belong to. So I can select portal user, for instance, and maybe it belongs to, maybe he's a portal user administrator as well, or something along those lines. So I can select multiple roles. Upon selecting these roles, those permissions are assigned automatically. You don't have to save or close it. They automatically get those roles. So again, just closing out of this. If I refresh this now, you'll see that he has those portal roles assigned to him. Now that Jim is a user, it automatically determined which contact he is in CRM. So now when he logs in, we'll know which contact he belongs to within Dynamic CRM. So we're not going to log in with him just yet. Well, what I want to do is just go back to my CRM system for a second. Going back to contacts. So not only can I create users on an individual basis, but I also can select a series of users and manage portal roles here. So what this will do is basically it will create a user. If they haven't already been created, it will create a user using their email address as their username and a random password, and also assign a portal role to them. What they would do with that password, they would obviously go to the login screen and they would click on reset password to reset that password, and it'll send out an email with a new password for them. So I can do it that way, or I can invite them to a portal, which will send out that email with a link to reset their password. So a few different ways of actually creating portal users for an administrator. Additionally, what you can do is on a page you can have a create user widget, which will allow people to do self-service creation of users themselves. So from there, now that we have Jim all created, if I open up another window here, I'm going to stay logged in as my administrator, so I'm going to open up an incognito window and go to tpc101.crmportalconnector.com. So here we are now at the login screen, logging in with Jim Glenn. Click on password, login, and we can navigate now to our profile page. So there we go, just a thank you page here that's already there. But under profile, if I go to my profile now, what you'll see is the profile form that you created with Jim Glenn's information pre-populated. So there it is, there's Jim's information. Of course, if I change this information, it's going to update CRM in real time. And the reason that's populating Jim's information is back to that one of those first steps that we did, creating that form. Let's just summarize this really quick. So if I go to my personal MVC profile page or form that I created, and we have that form configuration, click on edit. The reason it's actually populating Jim's information is because we have this populating with a contact ID. So say for instance I didn't want to populate Jim's information, but I wanted this profile page to be populated from a grid. So if I select this and change this back to default, click on save, publish this, and what I'm going to do is I'm just going to create another page here really quick. So let's go into pages, and there's a little bit of bonus content here. But if I go into my profile here and I create a child page, it's going to show you how to use some of this grid functionality. And I create a page called contacts. We'll show that in navigation. Let's select my other template here that I created, my custom template. Okay, click on save here. We're done. Create and go to add content. So again, I'm presented with that page designer. And what I'd like to use here is just our MVC grid widget. Just drag that on. Click on edit. That designer open up. There we go. I want to say allow adding records, allow editing records, and I can say, you know what, use a different page here. So I'm going to select a page, and I'm going to select that contact page. So now what I'm doing is I'm changing that profile form to an add edit contact page just by changing that configuration in the form. So click on done there. I can have actually different pages if I want a different page for editing versus adding, but in this particular scenario I'm just going to keep those two in there. I can say, yeah, you know what, go ahead and let them delete records as well. Clicking on data, we know this is going to be contacts, so we can select our contact entity. Where is it here? There it is. And I'm going to load my default fetch. So for the fetch builder, click on load default fetch. You can see here that it pulls out the full name, telephone ID, and the contact ID. This is based on the active view within Dynamics CRM, this fetch XML. If you know fetch XML, you can go ahead and start typing in there and customize this. But if you don't know fetch XML, no worries, because there's also a fetch XML builder. So I'm going to click on that build functionality. So open up our fetch XML builder. I'm going to add a couple attributes here, maybe email address and phone number, I guess. So I can go down here. Let's take a look at email. There it is. And you can see on the side here, it's actually modifying my fetch XML. And let's go with phone. Mobile phone, home phone, that's good enough. Home phone. I can add linked entities and filters and all that good stuff. I can even make this an aggregate fetch if I wanted to, but for the time being, that's good enough. So let's save and close. And then I have various settings, being able to group, sort, filter, all the good stuff that you would typically find in grids. We didn't use any filters, so we won't jump into that. But we can also define columns as well. So we have this email address. Maybe I want that email to be a link. So I can modify this and just add some HTML to it. Of course, this is all, like I said, bonus type content. And it's not required to configure a portal, but you do have this capability. So mail to, and I'll just add my little parameter here. So for these parameters, you can identify what these parameters are by clicking the little help and looking at the help for the column editor. But I'm just going to just configure this. There'll be some advanced training on how to use some of these other more advanced widgets after this basic configuration. We'll go through some mapping, some grids, and list view functionality. So clicking on update. Now that we have that HTML in there, click on save. And again, I'm just this is just more bonus content, just so you can see how you would do a parent-child relationship and how you have a list of records and drive into those contacts. Clicking on publish now, and we have that page created. So if I open up that profile page, and let me just go back here, get out this page. So now if I go to my menu, let's refresh this. There we are, my contacts page. Click on that. It's going to have a list of all the contacts within my dynamic CRM system. So there they all are, plus the ability to add them, edit them, and delete them. So you can see all the different ones. Plus I also have the ability to have that link there on that email address, and that was the last step I followed. So if I wanted to modify Patrick Sands, then click on that edit button, and it'll drive me into that my profile page. Right there, my profile with Patrick's record ID in it. So with that, that concludes our training. If there's any questions on any aspect of the training, we can go over that now. If there's any specific questions on something that you'd like to know, we do have a little bit of time to address those. So please ask away.